and good afternoon, everyone. Happy Sunday. I'm the Grace Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Sunday, September 17th, 2023. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread? First card that we are starting our day off with today is... we've got here the Emperor in its reversal. Now, this is going to feel a little bit different depending on whether you align to masculine or feminine energy. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to. Masculine energy right now. There could be some feelings right now of anxiety as it relates to the realms of self-empowerment at this time. For masculine energy that is in partnership at this moment, this is more of that potential leaning right now on the feminine energy that you are in partnership at this time. One of the things that we have been really warning for right now, particularly for the masculine energy, has been some situations or circumstances that may be feeling mildly triggering. It's really important right now, masculine, if you're feeling any of these feelings right now of uncertainty or anxiety, to really allow them to be a point of processing to help you channel as you go forward into a better sense of empowerment. This can be somewhat triggering energy, so I want you to be very cautious with this, masculine, if you are feeling this today. In partnership, this could be having some of that issue in terms of feeling that sense of alignment. You will recall that one of the things that we saw in partnership over this week has been a need for some leveling or adjustment at this time. Some of that imbalance was even being articulated right now from the feminine energy, even within partnership. For masculine, this could be feeling right now some of that situation or circumstance that we recognized over the last few days was potentially requiring some level or degree of compromise at this moment. There could be something that is feeling right now that is taking too much of a toll right now. For masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership at this moment, this is going to feel a little bit different. For the feminine energy that's in partnership at this moment, today could be a day that you're having to leverage a lot of support to the masculine to help them through some of these feelings or situations. For feminine energy right now that's not in partnership, this is again a lot of that feeling of uncertainty as it relates to allowing masculine energy in right now. We have been seeing that the feminine energy has been going through a process of healing, and that has been very difficult. Feminine energy is effectively looking for masculine to be coming from a state or place of integrity at this time to help navigate some of these uncertainties even as they're going through this space of healing. However, for today, feeling that today may be feeling a little bit overwhelming for the feminine. So this could, again, I'm just warning, let's be cautious about coming from a state of being triggered. For masculine energy that is not in partnership at this time, this too is something that has to be a bit of a caution area today, because there is something that is effectively happening right now that is making you feel some level or degree of uncertainty. And that could create some sense of imbalance within you. For now, today, we're really seeing for the masculine energy, this could potentially be, if you're doing a lot of this self-work, trying to come back into that state of empowerment within the self. While for other parts of the masculine energy, this is a bit of a trigger area, so I want you to be very cautious around this right now. Second card that we have coming through in our 5-card spread for today is, we have here the 8 of Cups in its reversal. This is some of that feeling of resistance that is potentially coming into play right now for both masculine and feminine energy. Bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to. For masculine and feminine energy right now that is in partnership or union, we are seeing that this could potentially be the result of situations or circumstances that are hard to move away from at this time. There could even be some conversations that are arising right now, potentially around situations or circumstances where we are trying to see that path forward. We identified earlier this week that even for the energies in partnership, there was some kind of feeling of compromise that is effectively coming into play right now. For the masculine, what we're effectively seeing right now is even in partnership, some of this sensation of having to come into a state of place of compromise is creating a bit of struggle point right now. There's some situation or circumstances that may be arising that you're not necessarily ready to move away from. This could even, I will point out, for some of the energy today, masculine specifically, this could be feeling some level of degree of almost like a grudge, or having to identify something that feels like a grudge that you are effectively having to work through right now. For the feminine energy right now that's in partnership, this may have to be some conversations that you're potentially having right now with masculine around some circumstances or situations that you may be identifying or blockages and trying to find that point of easement through them right now. But even now we're seeing that it's creating a sense of uncertainty that may need to be a lot of point of concentration right now, even in the aligned partnerships. While for masculine and feminine energy that are not in partnership at this moment, this is going to be feeling a bit different and a bit more difficult, because what we're really seeing right now is masculine. You are feeling this point of potential resistance or uncertainty. This is creating some sensation of even potential anxiety in you right now, because what we're really identifying here is, while masculine, you may be identifying some situations or circumstances that you are feeling a resistance, a determination not to potentially move away from. You are also potentially feeling some anxiety as to how to address that blockage. There's something here where the masculine energy may feel somewhat like in a point of limbo, feeling like they don't necessarily want to move away from something, but not necessarily being sure or confident about how to move forward at this time. Again, masculines, I'm really going to stress, make sure that you don't allow this to become a trigger point today as you navigate some of this energy. While for feminine that's effectively experiencing this right now, this could be feeling like there's something right now that you are potentially seeing in the masculine energy and their own hesitancy or refusal to move away from something, or to be able to have some level or degree of adaptability at this moment that may be causing some level or degree of frustration for you as well. Feminine is effectively potentially observing this right now around the masculine energy that may be asking them to potentially move away from something. This makes a lot of sense in the context of the fact that we identify that the feminine energy has been going through a process of healing. This is creating this level or degree of resistance that we're effectively seeing in the feminine. They're not necessarily in a space or place where they're ready to heal from something. However, the difficulty here is for the feminine is potentially articulating that this slowness that we're seeing on their part isn't necessarily a state or space of them walking away from something, but masculine is potentially trying to feel like there's pushing them into something or pushing them forward right now when they're not necessarily feeling confident or ready to do so. A lot of hesitancy that we're seeing that is coming into play right now, but we're also identifying to be very conscientious of these triggers as you navigate your day going forward. Center card for today's spread for today is 2 cards coming out for the center of our deck for today. And this has to do potentially with some situations or circumstances revolving around outside energy. For masculine and feminine energy right now, this is something that may be coming up or arising at this time, potentially in partnership at this moment. One of the things that we did identify, even for the energies that are partnership at this time, has been some discussion or orientation, potentially even some situations and circumstances that have to do with energy that is outside the partnership. Now, before you jump the gun, this doesn't necessarily mean outside relationships. I'm going to be very clear on that. This could be any kind of outside situations or circumstances that don't necessarily revolve around the energies that are in union, that are in some point of flux or disruption. We identified this earlier this week with some of that 6 of Cups energy that we saw. There may be some outside situations or circumstances right now that are creating some friction points within the partnership at this time. We even identified that there may have been some disparity in terms of how to handle or navigate those situations and circumstances. For feminine energy, this is potentially returning back to those situations and circumstances at this moment. This could even be some of that return back to some of those disputes that may have been opening up in the partnership at this time that were not necessarily completely resolved a few days ago. And what we're really seeing here is this is potentially the feminine energy articulating upon these points in partnership, having to identify how some situations and circumstances outside the relationship or something around outside parties is making the feminine energy feel underseen, underappreciated, or in a state or space where they feel they cannot be their most authentic, vulnerable self. This is potentially creating a further disruption point even in the relationship right now with the masculine energy, who is simultaneously also feeling some level or degree of instability. But this may be entirely related to the fact that the feminine energy refuses to potentially move on from some of these circumstances or situations that we saw were opening up over the last few days. This is something that is almost, and I can almost see it here, where we're almost seeing the masculine energy is kind of feeling disempowered right now, potentially even in partnership, because the feminine energy is holding on to something that we saw basically open up several days before. This is creating a bit of resistance right now, further flux in terms of how to basically navigate this at this time. While for masculine and feminine energy right now, that is in partnership. What we are really not in partnership, what we're really identifying right now is more of that hesitancy as it relates to the feminine, specifically potentially related to the outside energies that may be around the masculine at this time. Because while we do see the fact that the feminine energy was effectively blocking their own passion center, holding that back to a certain degree, we're still seeing that the feminine energy is operating in that state. Feminine energy is still showing a lot of anxiety here in terms of being vulnerable and open. And it has a lot to do with the outside energy, potentially even some anxieties right now around some of the masculine energy and what they're identifying as the energy around them. This is also creating a moment of disparity, though, I need to stress, even for the masculine energy that is potentially in this that is unpartnered, because there is also potentially some questions around energy that is around the feminine at this moment. So for both masculine and feminine energy, we are almost seeing an absolute reflection point that is occurring at this time. For the feminine, some of this outside energy is, or anxieties around outside energy, is creating spaces or places where they are feeling like they cannot be their most vulnerable, authentic self. Masculine is feeling the same exact thing, and it is making them feel very disempowered at this time. For both energies, this is a bit of a blockage point, because while we are identifying that there may be some circumstances or situations that don't want to be moved away from, there is something here about the situation and circumstances that is also effectively blocking the energies from coming into union. So this is Mercury retrograde shadow in its finest, my friends. Now let's see if we can get the fourth card today in our 5-card spread. Fourth card coming through here today is, we have here the Hangman in its reversal. This is looking for a point of easement. And this is going to be the solution to some of these circumstances or situations that we are seeing right now that are potentially causing some of this fear or anxiety or uncertainty. This anxiety about, for the feminine, being their most authentic expression of self. For the masculine, coming from a space of feeling very disempowered right at this moment. This is a moment of trying to make things easier. And this is effectively looking right now around situations and circumstances that are in this energy, and to really identify if there's one of two different things that could come into play. For half the collective right now, we see that this is that point of accommodation, that level of compromise that we are identifying that was going to allow for a point of easement going forward from this time. While for the other part of the collective, this is potentially a moment that is creating a break-off point, something that you're just completely moving away from because the circumstances or situations are potentially becoming too trying or too difficult at this moment. This is happening right now for both masculine and feminine energy that is in and out of partnership. So I need to stress that even if you're in partnership at this time, there may be some points of frustration and some triggering energy that may be hit that needs to be navigated. Finding that path of compromise or solution is probably going to be the preferable route, because there is something here that feels like it has been being held, hasn't necessarily been coming into an accommodation point. And today we're almost seeing that it's reaching that moment of being able to come through that hurdle or difficulty. Fifth card today for our 5-card spread, before we start getting clarification on these cards right now, is we have here, if this looks familiar, it's because we pulled it just the other day. This is identifying those spaces and places that feel like they are creating a level of degree of too much imbalance. This could be a lot of discussion right now in terms of what needs to be accommodated or changed to allow for that balance to come back into play. For both masculine and feminine energy, even if you are in partnership at this moment, this could be some difficult energy that must be navigated at this time. There could even be a lot of discussion right now around some of the external forces that are happening around you in this moment that may be creating these spaces or places of disruption. But what we appreciate at this time, this is almost a carryover. I need to stress, this is almost a carryover of a conversation or situation that we saw that was happening earlier in the week with the partnered energies. There's something here that has been coming into a point of easement. We almost saw that while there was a level or degree of catharsis yesterday around it, this is something that feels like it hasn't necessarily been fully fixed or fully navigated. So there may be a lot of discussion today in terms of what can be done to allow for that level of degree of further balance moving forward. For masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership at this time, this is potentially a lot of that make or break energy we're seeing, potentially as it relates to some of these energies that are effectively in separation at this time. Because what we are really identifying at this moment is the feminine is still not necessarily in a space or place where they feel like they can be completely open and vulnerable. Masculine has reached a point where they feel like they are losing some mastery of self at this time. They're both effectively feeling a blockage at this moment, and there may even be some question as it relates to outside energy in these circumstances or situations. This is a point of trying to navigate right now to see if there is a point of easement that can be reached, or if these are situations and circumstances that feel too imbalanced, that are creating spaces or places that need to be moved away from entirely. A lot of this is effectively coming into play here, and this makes a lot of sense as we recognize the fact that the feminine energy is basically moving in a state of healing right now. A lot of concentration on that, and that is effectively isolating the feminine energy as they navigate some of this. Now let's see if we can get some clarity on these cards to continue what we are seeing. In combination, our Emperor in its reversal, along with our Eight of Cups in its reversal. This could be feeling today, masculine, of really coming to a point of identifying a blocker, feeling a level of degree of not being able to walk away from something, but not necessarily knowing what to do or how to fix it. This is also further feeling aggravated today because it's not feeling like a point of empowerment. It's making you feel this level or degree of hesitancy at this time. Feminine, you are potentially seeing this right now in the masculine energy. There may be even some situations or circumstances right now, feminine, that you may be questioning the masculine energy because of their inability to move away from something at this time. So a lot of this push-pull coming into play today for both masculine and feminine energy in and out of partnership. May I please get one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Five of Swords. Situations and circumstances that feel like they are open-ended that need to be addressed. For both masculine and feminine energy right now, this is the return to some circumstances or situations that feel like they were never necessarily cleared up. We are identifying at this time that one of the things that we articulated upon, that we were seeing that was happening, that was creating a blockage between the masculine and feminine energy at this moment, was the fact that for some of the masculine energy that is not in partnership at this time, there were some situations and circumstances where either you were going back to past energy or you are moving right now towards new energy. However, we also identified for a lot of that energy, you are encountering the same issue, the same trauma, regardless of whether you're going back to past experiences or future experiences. Feminine is in a point right now where there is a deep degree of not feeling like they want to come into a state of openness towards the masculine energy. This is more of that energy that we saw that was coming into play yesterday, of the masculine being in a level or degree of feeling somewhat disempowered from this circumstance or situation, because it is almost requiring a level or degree of the masculine feeling like they're effectively being forced to deal with something that they may not necessarily have been ready to deal with. Masculine, this is creating an internal sense of crisis within you right now, because it's effectively putting the situation or circumstance around you where you effectively have to face something. And this level of degree of facing something is very problematic because it's creating a sense or level right now of also feeling highly disempowering at the same time. Again, I'm going to warn the masculine energy that's going through this or navigating this at this moment to really be able to channel that sense of self-mastery in this moment. Again, working through this, not letting it let you hit a trigger point, because often when we see this type of energy at play, it can make you feel somewhat triggered. Feminine energy that is effectively going through this at this time, this is also creating a bit of a challenging space at this moment, because for the feminine right now, this is feminine really sticking to situations or circumstances that they need to see a point of clarity on, specifically as it relates to masculine energy. Feminine energy right now is carrying over a lot of this trauma that we're seeing. One of the ways that the feminine energy is working through this trauma right now is the fact that they're not effectively letting it completely disappear. I need to stress this. The feminine energy is going through a healing process right now that is requiring them to effectively hold on to some of that trauma, some of that difficulty, but in very productive ways. Utilizing that right now as a point of boundary setting, looking towards the masculine energy to try to interpret and identify if the masculine energy can come forward from this space of integrity. Feminine energy is effectively working right now in this space of holding a lot of this cautious energy around them. The problem being is that it's effectively disempowering some of the masculine energy that is feeling this at this moment. This is creating a point of resistance right now for the energies that are not in partnership, that is effectively making some sense or level of having to address some circumstances from the past in order to come into a space of deeper easement. Now, for the masculine and the feminine energy that is in partnership at this moment, this is effectively having to address some circumstances or situations that may have felt unresolved over the last few days. There may have been something that kind of reached an impasse point. We even identified this right now as it relates to the partnered energies. There was something that was very triggering in the partnership that wasn't necessarily fully resolved. Today, we almost see that there's something about confronting whatever wasn't resolved right now to be able to come into a space or place of deeper easement. But even for the energies in partnership at this moment, this could be feeling like a bit of a challenging space. Feminine, you may be feeling called right now to have to lend a level of degree of support to the masculine right now, because there's even potentially something right now about having these conversations that feels like it puts the masculine energy in a sense that it is hard to discuss, or it is difficult to discuss. It is challenging the masculine's energy own sense of mastery as they try to do this at this time. But this is allowing for some breakthroughs to occur, some points of compromise and easement that are going to allow for a more productive path forward. But before that can happen, the imbalance needs to be identified, and we're actually seeing a lot of that coming into play today. Continuing to get clarity on these cards right now, between our 8 of Cups in its reversal, in combination with our star energy in its reversal, in combination with our 3 of Cups in its reversal. So for masculine and feminine energy right now, this is potentially some of this point of articulation. Even for the partnered energies right now, there could be a lot of discussion around some situations and circumstances from the last few days that need to effectively be addressed. And this could be having to articulate upon how you feel in these circumstances and situations, because what we're really identifying right now is there's something about these circumstances and situations that need to be addressed that are creating trigger points for both masculine and feminine energy. Masculine is coming from a state of disempowerment, feeling some loss of that sense of self-mastery that is creating a bit of a problem area within them. Feminine is effectively feeling a level of vulnerability, feeling like they can't be their most honest, authentic sense of self. This potentially, for the partnered energies, could potentially have to do with some circumstances or situations around outside energies that is also coming into play here that needs to effectively be resolved and managed. And this is creating potentially more of a blockage point, because this is potentially some situation or circumstance that there may have been an understanding of compromise around, but yet we see two energies that do not necessarily seem like they are in a level of degree where they're ready to come into a point of compromise. So this could be a bit of a challenging space today. While for the masculine and the feminine energy that is not in partnership at this moment, this is effectively what is creating some of these walls, or creating some of these resistance points. Because what we're really identifying at this time is, again, masculine is effectively being kind of forced to confront some situations and circumstances within the self that is either creating something that feels like it is a growth moment. It is a moment where they are starting to get a better understanding of themselves, specifically from the position that you are putting the feminine in at this time. For some of the masculine energy right now, this is potentially feeling deeply triggering. There could even be a feeling right now from some of the masculine that you're almost feeling like in some sense of victimhood, or feeling like this is happening to you, as opposed to being able to understand and recognize the lessons that are coming through at this time. Feminine is effectively moving from a way or space or place right now where they're feeling like they cannot be their most authentic sense of self. We're actually getting kind of an energy here of masculine potentially feeling this, and feminine being in a state or space of trying to help articulate to the masculine energy right now that this isn't necessarily something that is personal. This is effectively creating right now a state or space that is feeling somewhat challenging right now, because what we're really identifying is this is an area that we're seeing that is potentially rife with miscommunication. Identifying and understanding this level of degree of miscommunication that is effectively occurring right now between the masculine and feminine is something that effectively needs to be resolved at this moment. Because for some of these energies, you may be taking this very personally without necessarily understanding that this has to do with a level of degree of sensitivity at this time. Masculine and feminine energy, you may even be trying to channel this right now into the anxiety around outside energy, and having this be a point of articulation that you need to describe to the oppositional energy. But even doing so is creating a bit of a wall. So a lot of work right now through some very difficult circumstances that are triggering both feminine and masculine energy that need to effectively be resolved. Getting clarification on these 3 cards right now is, we have here 7 of Swords in its reversal. What we're really identifying at this time are some situations and circumstances that are requiring a need or degree of compromise, but that's also a commitment not to go back to situations and circumstances that were creating any sense of difficulty or trauma for you in the past. Both masculine and feminine energy are working very hard to do this to a certain degree, and it is playing out in very different ways depending on whether you are in partnership at this moment. For the masculine and the feminine energy that are in partnership at this time, this is effectively more of that recalibration that we're seeing, potentially an identification point that is happening right now, having to articulate about what the other energy did that may have caused pain, but all for the mutual agreement of not going back to those circumstances to allow for that pain to occur going forward. This is creating a state or place of some difficult conversations that are effectively arising at this time, but it is allowing for a level of degree of deeper easement going forward. Now, for the masculine and the feminine energy that is not in partnership at this time, this is feeling much, much, much more difficult, because what we're really identifying at this moment is for both masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership, there is effectively a point of assessing that is occurring. This is effectively something that we are seeing that is creating spaces or places that could feel very triggering. Feminine could effectively even be articulating to masculine that they don't want to return back to circumstances or situations that they may have experienced in the past that caused this level or degree of difficulty for them. Feminine energy is effectively being very reluctant and resistant to open up to masculine exactly for this very reason. Masculine, for their part at this moment, is also in this space where they are also feeling very deeply triggered. Why? Because some of the masculine energy is potentially looking right now to the feminine, and they're not necessarily even identifying the fact that this is a feminine energy that isn't necessarily in a space or place where they feel comfortable opening up. They're potentially even channeling this right now into assuming that the feminine energy is in a space or place where there must be outside partnerships that are effectively impacting the feminine to be in this vibration, which might not necessarily be the truth, is what we're really seeing here. This is more of a level or degree that we're identifying here, that the feminine energy is feeling a point of caution in coming forward and being vulnerable at this time. This is also creating something that is feeling very triggering for the masculine, potentially around situations and circumstances that also cause difficulty to them at this time. Do you see how complicated these two energies are at this moment? They're effectively mirroring each other, but in the worst way possible. So I want to say for everyone, let's work through this with like a state of easement to find better ways and degrees of productivity. That's going to come from it right now, not by being triggered, but by allowing yourself to push through and try to come into that state and space of openness and vulnerability. Masculine, that's going to take a level of degree of self-mastery of the self at this time. Feminine, that's going to require a level and degree of vulnerability at this moment. Without these two pieces coming together, that's not going to necessarily lead to productive spaces. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our star energy in its reversal in combination with our 3 of cups in its reversal in combination with our hangman in its reversal. So situations and circumstances that are effectively coming into play right now that are feeling very challenging for both masculine and feminine energy. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what you feel most aligned to. Even in partnership at this time, there could be some triggering circumstances and situations that are rising to the surface, may potentially have to do with some outside energy at this time. This could even be some situations and circumstances that occurred over the last few days that weren't necessarily resolved, because we saw this same energy coming in over the last few days. For masculine and feminine right now, this is a point of trying to come into a state of deeper easement. For the energies that are in partnership, this is leading to spaces and places of compromise at this time. Doing what is necessary to allow for a state of easement that is going to feel reciprocal for both sides. Though I have to warn you, even in partnership right now, there's a lot of triggering energy here. Well, for masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership at this moment, this is feeling like a lot of that like rubber meets the road, make or break moment as it relates to the continuation forward around some situations and scenarios that are effectively in separation. Why do we see this right now? Because feminine energy is effectively in a space right now. This is very like almost hermit energy that we're seeing right now around the feminine. Anxieties and fears coming into play, a feeling of not necessarily being able to be your most vulnerable, authentic expression of self, potentially related to outside energy. This is also now a moment the feminine is effectively analyzing their own comfort level around situations and circumstances to decide whether they feel that there is a point of compromise that can be reached, or if these are just situations and circumstances that they need to break away from entirely. Masculine is also doing this work right now, but in relation to feminine. And it is feeling somewhat more disempowering for the masculine right now, because what masculine is effectively identifying right now in the feminine is this space or place where the feminine isn't feeling very vulnerable and open. Masculine is seeing this right now in the feminine as potentially even jumping to the conclusion that that has something to do with outside energy as opposed to the feminine's own anxiety around all the energy that is around them right now during this healing cycle. This is also leading a level or degree of the masculine right now that is forcing them to ask themselves, is there a point of easement? Is there a point of compromise that it can come into play here? Because it's going to require a lot of self-mastery on the part of the masculine. Or is this that breakaway point that is going to allow you to move on to other situations or scenarios? May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with, we have here the 9 of Cups in its reversal. Spaces or places of coming forward, being upright, being open, allowing this to a certain extent to be the point of easement. There is potentially a feeling right now that is happening both for masculine and feminine energy about not necessarily being your full authentic expression of self. Masculine and feminine energy are effectively potentially working on this right now. The problem is both energies are so triggered. You're not necessarily in a space or place where you feel like you have this level or degree of openness. There may even be some anxiety related to being open to this level and degree right now, even for the partnered energies. There could be a feeling right now that is effectively feeling, and again, this is going to have a deeper impart right now on effectively on the feminine energy, because what we're really identifying here for the feminine is this level and degree in terms of feeling like, again, the feminine energy having anxiety about potentially giving forth or over giving around situations and circumstances that they're not getting back in kind. This could even be a point of discussion that is effectively reached today around both energies to try to find that point of compromise and that point of easement. Feminine energy could even be articulating today to the masculine that they may feel right now that they're giving more than they can right now and not getting some of that back in kind. Or for masculine right now, this is the problem area that we need to articulate and identify. What we're really seeing here is potentially even in partnership, some discussions about what one is giving and what the other is giving, and not necessarily seeing the alignment in those two things. Potentially even, and I need to stress this for the energies that are in partnership at this moment, an over focus right now on what you are effectively giving forth, and not necessarily a level or degree of being open to recognizing what the other party is also contributing. This could be a lot of that back and forth energy right now in partnership that could become a bit of a trigger area. So be very cautious about triggering conversations right now, even in partnership at this moment. Make sure that there is a level of accountability in terms of what someone else is giving forth, even as you recognize your own contributions. For masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership at this moment, this is a deep trigger point, because there could be a feeling right now around each energy that is feeling very triggered, that someone isn't being completely forthright, completely open. There is potentially even a lot of discussion that is happening in this area, or even worse, what I'm seeing here, a lack of discussion around these areas, but instead almost a withdrawal because of these situations and scenarios that are coming into play. Both masculine and feminine energy are moving from this right now, but feminine is potentially in a space right now where they are feeling very deeply triggered around these circumstances or situations. There could be a feeling right now for the feminine of having a point of anxiety, where there is this desire for openness at this time. There is this desire to give forth towards masculine, but It's almost potentially being overridden right now by all this work that we see that the feminine is doing right now in the spaces and places of trauma, of working through trauma, of fear, of anxiety, that is causing the feminine to hold back, but specifically for the sake and the sanctity of their own level of vulnerability at this time. Masculine, for your part, you're potentially seeing this around the feminine energy, and it may be creating a space or place of confusion for you at this moment. There could be a moment that you are identifying or articulating the fact that it is leaving you feeling somewhat disempowered, because it is creating a space or place where you are identifying, again, the masculine that is seeing this at this moment is either experiencing this and seeing this from two different optics. They're either seeing this right now from a feminine energy that is very resistant to opening up. And that is creating a sense of anxiety because you are feeling this level of degree that you are still trying to have this energy open up, and you're identifying the reasons why. You're getting to potentially the heart of the matter. You are understanding why the feminine energy is so resistant to potentially open up to you at this time. Doing that process of self-work to allow for a level of higher degree of mastery and understanding. For the masculine energy that is not necessarily in that same modality right now, this could be feeling very triggering for you because something about the lack of the feminine energy being open at this time or vulnerable to you is arising concerns to you right now that this may be entirely as it's related to outside energy. That you're potentially assuming that the feminine energy must be in this place or place because of outside energy, and this is then creating a level or degree of resistance for you at this time. This is why we see that this is that moment right now where, again, this is either coming into a state or space of compromise, working through, coming into something to allow for a point of easement, or this is that moment of effectively moving away from something that is feeling like it is too challenging or too triggering. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Hangman in its reversal, Star in its reversal, and our Three of Cups in its reversal. So, navigating some situations and circumstances at this time that are feeling deeply triggering for both masculine and feminine energy, even in and out of partnership at this time. For both masculine and feminine energy that is in partnership at this moment, there are some feelings of unalignment, potentially as it relates to some of the situations and circumstances that have to do with outside energy at this time. We're really seeing that for both energies, this is potentially a carryover of some of those issues that I mentioned may have come up over the last few days as it relates to potentially friends, family, outside energies, some point of conflict, some point of resolution that needs to be received. Might not necessarily have to do anything to do with the partnership itself at this moment. This is that point of potentially having to articulate about what those circumstances or situations did, how you reacted to them, what they caused. Having to identify this at this time is creating some sense right now for both of these energies that feels very triggering. But we are seeing that for the energies that are in alignment at this time, this is also what is allowing for some productive path forward. Because even for the partnered energies right now, there could be feeling like there is something here that still needs to be addressed. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is not in partnership, this is a bit of that make or break moment that we're seeing. Because again, this is masculine energy feeling some anxiety towards feminine because the feminine energy is not effectively open or vulnerable to them. Feeling some anxiety or degree of assuming that is potentially around outside energies, or effectively understanding and recognizing that the feminine energy is effectively anxious around all outside energies. This is that point of duality that we're seeing in the collective right now. For feminine, this is just something triggering you very deeply right now around the masculine energy that is also creating a make or break point. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with, we have here our Page of Cups in its reversal. This is that moment that we're really trying to see. And again, this is the feminine effectively trying to operate in a state or place in terms of trying to identify and understand the masculine coming forward from a space of seriousness. There's something very important right now that the feminine is effectively working through right now, wanting to make sure that the masculine energy that is approaching them at this time isn't just coming towards them from a state of their own pleasure or their own delight. Feminine energy is very much committed right now not to allow this type of energy to effectively come in. Feminine energy is looking right now towards masculine to try to identify this imbalance. There could even be something that is happening right now with the feminine energy in terms of having to articulate to masculine about their own need or degree of level of seriousness or commitment being brought forth, even as a point of entry for the feminine energy to feel a degree or level of wanting to go forward right now with masculine. This is creating right now a sense right now that we're seeing with the masculine that is making them understand and identify to a certain extent, if you're not in partnership at this moment, that you may be feeling forced to a level of degree to have to reach a new level of seriousness at this time. This is feeling very challenging and triggering right now for the masculine energy, because as we identified over the last few days, this isn't necessarily something that you feel like it's forcing you effectively to confront something that you may not necessarily have wanted or desired to confront. For some of the masculine energy at this time, this is potentially a breaking away point from some energies, effectively identifying that this isn't some level that you want to move into right now, and that's what's creating this point of separation at this time. While for the other part of the masculine energy right now, this is potentially going to feel more like a light bulb moment, almost like coming into a sense of recognizing that there's something here that is helping you build something that feels more mature going forward. Now, for the masculine and feminine energy that is in partnership, what we're effectively seeing at this time is even now, this is a moment that you are experiencing that is requiring some period of point of productivity. There's something here that is causing some level of degree, even in partnership right now for the masculine at this moment, that is potentially feeling some level of degree of frustration, even in the partnership. Something here around the feminine energy is effectively forcing the masculine energy to potentially be in a vibration where they're feeling like they cannot necessarily do the things that they wanted to, come into a state of easement. And it's not too surprising to be seeing this at this moment, because what we're really seeing here is this is some situation or circumstance in partnership that potentially the masculine energy is trying really hard to move away from. There's something here in partnership where the masculine energy is hoping that you can just use this as a point of easement. Just continue forward on this, not necessarily dwell on something. And what we're actually seeing here is potentially there's something here that the feminine energy is kind of forcing a dwelling point on. Not necessarily moving away from, but having to effectively articulate upon it. That could be feeling somewhat exhausting right now, even for the masculine energy that is in partnership at this moment. This is forcing the masculine and feminine energy right now to come into a point of compromise, even as it relates to how to go forward at this time. But even, and this is why I say this is so triggering, even if you're in partnership at this time, something around doing this doesn't necessarily feel like it's fair. It doesn't necessarily feel like it's fair to the masculine, because even here we see that there's something here the masculine is feeling somewhat disempowered in terms of this path forward. Feminine, for your part, we're seeing here that you're also feeling this level of degree of frustration. And that has potentially to do with what these circumstances and situations made you feel. There's something here that is almost being required by the feminine right now that's really being articulated upon, but it's all being done for the masculine energy to understand the difference for the feminine between what they feel comfortable with versus what they don't feel comfortable with. And even for the energies in partnership at this time, there could be a lot of conversation around this as you proceed forward from this point. Continuing to get clarity on these cards right now between our Five of Swords in combination with our Seven of Swords in its reversal. Now this is feeling like a little bit of a challenge here, potentially for all energies in or out of partnership at this time. Because what we're really identifying at this moment is there is something that is coming to light right now around circumstances and situations from the past. There's something here from the past that is rising to the surface, and there's a lot of potential conversations about how to move forward and not repeat any of the pain points of the past at this time. Even in partnership at this moment, this is potentially someone bringing something up that someone else doesn't want to talk about, but saying that they're doing it for the absolute best reason necessary, for the sake of making sure that it doesn't effectively happen the same way again. This is something for the partnered energies that may not necessarily have been fully resolved over the last few days that's suddenly coming back to the surface, while for the masculine and the feminine energy that is not in partnership at this time, this is the trigger point. Something right now is triggering both masculine and feminine energy out of partnership that they're seeing in the other energy. And this is that moment of trying to identify what that is to confirm and affirm that this isn't going to go back to situations and circumstances that caused any pain points. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with what solves this problem? What is going to solve this problem? If you're feeling triggered and you're worried about something being a repetition of the past, how do we effectively fix that? We effectively fix that with open give and take. with give and take, that allowing that level of degree of reciprocity to effectively come into play. So again, navigating some of this trigger that may come up today, moving into a space of, again, openness, reciprocity is effectively going to be the answer to these problems right now. The problem is, and this is a bit of the problem at this moment, the answer to this situation and circumstances is openness, reciprocity. But this is creating a state or space that is so difficult right now for both masculine and feminine energy. Why do I say that? I'm saying that because masculine energy is feeling very disempowered right now. It's going to be really hard for the masculine energy to be open in this vibration. Feminine energy is feeling super anxious about being vulnerable at this time. This is going to create an anxiety point for the feminine being open to that level and degree of reciprocity. There's almost a mutual understanding here that someone needs to come forward. Someone needs to start this. Someone needs to kick this off. And there may even be an articulation point of feminine and masculine energy almost having like an emotional standoff right now, if you will, looking towards the other energy and being like, are you going to go first? Or are you going to go first? Am I going to go first? Or are you going to go first? Trying to get to this point of allowing for this to become more harmonic. In and out of partnership today, this is happening. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our 7 of Swords in its reversal in combination with our 9 of Cups in its reversal. Again, a situation and circumstance that is effectively happening right now, an anxiety and fear, not wanting to go back to circumstances and situations from the past that caused any degree or difficulty of pain. And what's the trigger point? Feeling like someone isn't being fully open, feeling like someone isn't necessarily being fully honest, feeling this anxiety that someone isn't really showing their full self at this time, triggering both masculine and feminine energy at this moment, at a time that could not be worse for these two energies, because we're effectively seeing that they're being both in a space where they're feeling the anxiety of coming forward towards one another in this fashion, hence creating more of this trigger point. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with this feeling of isolation that is effectively coming into play right now. But we don't like this feeling of isolation because it doesn't necessarily feel like it is productive. It is feeling more like a spiraling out moment. It is feeling more the frustration or anxiety of being at a point of solitude, but not enjoying the benefits of that solitude. Almost allowing the solitude to create this level of degree of anxiety that's effectively rising forward in this. It's creating a space or place that isn't allowing something productive to happen. Because what we're effectively seeing right now is, instead of this becoming a point of productivity for some of the energy at this moment, some of that point of separation is creating a lot of anxiety and fear about what is effectively occurring in between. This is something that needs to be navigated today. I want you guys to be careful not to let yourself get triggered, but to move from a state or space of openness, of honesty, of reciprocity, to try to make sure that you can navigate some of these hurdles instead of allowing them to become further isolating incidents. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our 9 of Cups in its reversal in combination with our Page of Cups. So for masculine and feminine energy at this time, there is this level of degree of feeling of trying to ascertain the seriousness of the energies that are at play right now. For the masculine and feminine energy, even if they're in partnership at this time, there may be a lot of discussions right now that are effectively occurring about the feminine potentially, and we need to see this. I need to warn right now for the masculines that may be experiencing this. There may be some discussions right now about the feminine feeling some anxiety around the contribution of the masculine at this time. Feminine potentially even articulating in some way, shape, or degree right now that there's something about the masculine energy being at a point right now that feels like it is not kind of coming forward in the same level of degree of reciprocity. There may even be some conversations that effectively happen right now in partnership where masculine is feeling the frustration of not effectively having a point of easement, because the feminine energy is effectively kind of building this level of degree of like more that they need to do, more that it needs to occur. Do you see how this is becoming a bit of a problem area here? This is identifying these sources of imbalance are creating almost more imbalance in the masculine right now, because it doesn't necessarily feel like it's productive, because both energies don't feel like the other person is recognizing or acknowledging potentially the effort of the other person, if you will. While for masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership at this moment, this is a level or degree that is going to feel effectively like there is this point of anxiety around the other energy. There's an uncertainty that we're seeing here where either energy isn't necessarily sure where the other one is at. There's something here where there's a lack of optics that is effectively occurring. There's an anxiety that the other person isn't being completely forthright. Feminine is feeling a lot of anxiety and fear right now of masculine coming towards them in a space that only serves their own purposes. Masculine, for their part, is moving from a space or place right now where they're feeling effectively blocked from feminine because the feminine energy is being so resistant. This is also creating a sense of frustration for the masculine because the masculine isn't necessarily enjoying this in any way. It's almost taking their enjoyment from them, even in spaces and places that they may return to for points of distraction at this time. This is some of that blockage that we're seeing. This is a hurdle that needs to be addressed, is what we're really seeing. However, it's creating a bit of a lot of triggering situations and scenarios as we're reaching this point of imbalance. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with Queen of Wands. Clarification coming through right now with Queen of Wands, which is really showing this point right now. And for the feminine, this is going to feel like a little bit of this energy of trying to like having to step to bat. It really does. It's really kind of creating a moment right now that is effectively allowing the feminine energy to articulate. It's allowing the feminine energy to be in a space of articulation and planning. Because what we're really seeing that is effectively happening right now for both masculine and feminine energy at this moment is this is a moment that there is this point of alignment that's effectively needing to be reached. And feminine is effectively helping the masculine through it by utilizing their own powers of communication. Feminine, you may even be experiencing or seeing this right now around your masculine energy. There may be something that you're seeing that they're reaching a level or degree of exhaustion on in terms of what that path ahead forward is. This is potentially feminine energy reaching that recognition point of the masculine, reaching that hurdle or that limitation at this time. Almost like helping to build that productive path forward. This is how we see that the two energies in partnership at this moment are effectively supporting each other. Because one of the things that we're effectively seeing here that may be effectively happening is the fact that as it relates to some of these circumstances and situations, if these energies are in partnership, masculine may be even at a point right now that they're feeling some level of degree of frustration in terms of not necessarily knowing what to do at this time. We are seeing here that there's a point of imbalance that is effectively being reached at this time. And masculine is reaching almost a point of exhaustion in terms of how to navigate it right now. And this is that point where the feminine in partnership at this moment may be coming forward right now with ideas, with plans, with some path ahead that is going to allow for a degree of productivity. This is where we see these combining energies working to support one another today. But today, specifically, feminine needs to make sure that they're not necessarily moving into a space or place of being too overpowering. Because sometimes when we see the combination of these two energies together, it could start to feel like that. So feminine energy that's going through this right now, make sure that you're navigating this from a space of understanding. We're also really seeing, and this is really important right now, having a level and degree of empathy for where you find the masculine at this time is extremely valuable and important, because we're even seeing here for the masculine energy that's in partnership at this time that there's something here that we're almost seeing that there's a combining effort of trying to show one another what your contribution is in partnership. Making sure to have that level or degree of empathy is going to be very important at this time. While for masculine and feminine energy right now that is not in partnership, What we're really identifying at this moment is this point that is feeling like a true blockage right now, because what we're really identifying is the masculine energy is moving from a state or place that feels very, very frustrating. Effectively, the masculine energy is feeling that there's a moment right now where they're feeling extremely disempowered, potentially very triggered. There's something here that they feel that they cannot come forward right now to the feminine because they're not necessarily sure how to. They're almost, to a certain extent, looking towards feminine right now to effectively give them some point of insight in terms of how to navigate forward effectively. Feminine, for your part right now, this is potentially coming through right now in terms of feeling this alignment within the self. You're effectively seeing this right now. You're feeling some of this energy around the masculine right now. But what you're really doing at this time is you're trying to focus this into productive spaces and places. We really appreciate even the energies that are in separation at this time, because what we're really identifying at this moment is that feminine energy is effectively going through this trigger a bit more easily. Feminine energy isn't necessarily allowing themselves to get triggered. Masculine is also not getting triggered, but in a different way. Masculine is effectively coming through this trigger point right now by trying to help navigate to the feminine their seriousness and their commitment to circumstances or situations. Feminine is navigating this by not letting this become something where they become overly emotive, but instead utilizing their own powers of planning and their own ability to articulate upon their feelings at this time, to help build that level or degree of easement going forward. Now, for some of the collective right now, I need to stress that this is also going to potentially feel like very rough energy today, because we're effectively seeing a bit of that make or break point at this time. This is feminine energy that is deeply in a point of empowerment at this time. This is that work of healing that is happening. For some of the masculine energy, this may feel somewhat intimidating. It may come across as somewhat overpowering, almost to a certain extent, especially if you're not in alignment with your own feminine energy. This is requiring a level or degree right now of easement and understanding. For some of the masculine energy at this time, this is allowing that process to occur by which you are coming into that higher mastery of the self. For feminine at this time, this is effectively a moment that the feminine is effectively identifying whether the masculine energy is also trying to move in that path of coming into alignment, of coming into harmony, or if they're only effectively serving their own purposes. This is very beautiful work here, because we do see that even through some of these hurdles right now, we see that positive communication is effectively coming forth right now, specifically from feminine trying to speak from a place of honesty towards the masculine. Now, for the continuing to get clarification on these cards right now, between our Six of Pentacles in combination with our Hermit in its reversal. So a moment right now that is feeling very difficult, because we are seeing right now, and I need to stress this, everybody needs to be very kind to each other today, because there is something really coming into play right now around some fears of being in solitude, some anxieties around isolation, but also because we see here that the need for reciprocity is tremendous. Even for the masculine and feminine energy that is effectively in partnership right now, there may be some discussions or feelings right now about feeling somewhat alone around some circumstances or situations. These are isolating energies that we see that both masculine and feminine are in right now. They're requiring a level or degree of compassion to one another, identifying how isolating some of these circumstances and experiences can be. Effectively, potentially even like having to have a bit of empathy and compassion right now in understanding each other's unique journey and not letting that become a point of further isolation. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with, we've got here our Six of Wands and it's upright. We've got here success, victory, positive outcomes. Working in this function and in this capacity right now is going to lead to productive spaces today. Identifying this right now, recognizing, having that point of observation is effectively what is going to lead to that level of degree of success right now. And there may even be a moment right now of feeling like there are some circumstances and situations that are effectively isolating by nature. But recognizing that, as it were, and being able to put that energy of empathy into play is what is going to allow for that deeper easement going forward. It's rough territory today. Whenever we see some of this Hermit in its reversal, this can start to feel like a bit of that frustration point. But we're seeing that ultimately, especially in the areas and spaces of reciprocity at this time, it's leading to very productive points of view, particularly for partnership. Now, for masculine and feminine energy right now that is not in partnership, this is more of that make or break moment. Because what we're really seeing, and I will articulate this, there are some circumstances or situations. All we're seeing here for the energies that are not in partnership, there is a feeling and anxiety or degree of some energy not being able to be fully open towards the other. Feminine and masculine are effectively both asking that from one another, but they're both in a space or place where they're feeling deeply, deeply triggered to do so. For the masculine and the feminine energy that are working in this capacity right now, this is a moment that we are either seeing that someone is coming forward right now with that level of degree of reciprocity. Or if they're not, it could be leading right now to feeling further separation, further isolation. Both energies right now are trying to work right now through a point of victory, identifying what is effectively needed here to allow for that more productive outcome. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between the Hermit card in its reversal in combination with our Queen of Wands. So, for feminine and masculine energy in and out of partnership at this moment, this is more of that potential trigger point that we are seeing is rising to the surface right now that needs to effectively be adjusted or navigated to some level or degree. For both masculine and feminine energy right now, there could be a lot of discussions right now around situations or scenarios that make you feel somewhat isolated. Feminine energy is working right now to support the masculine by coming into this power of articulation. We're even identifying right now for the energy that is in partnership at this time that there may be some situations and circumstances that we're seeing the masculine energy is effectively saying to the feminine right now, they don't want to talk about. They don't want to address. They don't want to deal with. This is more of that pullover that we saw that was happening through the week around some situations and circumstances where masculine is effectively saying like, I don't want to deal with it. And feminine is potentially coming in right now to lend that support, to lend that degree of adaptability and saying, what can I do to help? What can I do to amend? What can I do to make this easier? Hence the masculine and feminine utilizing this point of difficulty to come into a state of better union through the masculine energy's own feelings of disempowerment and feminine energy effectively stepping up to assist in that area. For masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership at this moment, this could be some feelings that feel much more isolating at this time. Because what we're really seeing at this moment is for some of the masculine energy that is at play right now, there's a lot of attention that you're putting right now towards feminine energy. But you are feeling some level of degree of isolation and an inability to be able to reach that energy. Again, for some of the masculine energy right now, this is due to the fact that you are feeling this level of degree of the fact that the feminine energy has effectively energetically closed off to you at this time. You're feeling that anxiety. For a lot of the masculine energy, I will even point out right now, some of this is even coming through right now with the masculine energy questioning. We've been seeing this, a questioning of whether this energy wants the masculine energy to contact them, whether they want to be in communication with them, because we see the fact that the feminine energy is operating from such a point of insular work right now. For feminine energy right now, this is also a moment that is feeling somewhat isolating if you are not in partnership at this time. Because what we're really identifying right now is the fact that you're moving into this state of space of productivity. You're trying to allow yourself to come into this degree and understanding. You're coming into that better understanding of the self. This was the whole point that we identified that the feminine energy was trying to work into in terms of shedding some of this grief, in terms of shedding some of this trauma, in terms of coming into a point of healing. Feminine energy has effectively come into this point right now. The difficulty or the hurdle right now is doing so has become a very isolating experience. Feminine energy is also feeling very separate right now from masculine. Not a lot of potential communication today in these areas. Working through a lot of these triggers today is potentially going to be a lot of the homework. May I please have one card to clarify? Two cards coming out to clarify. Easement through offers, through opportunity. This is how we see the masculine and feminine energy are effectively assisting and aiding each other at this time. Masculine and feminine energy that are working together in this degree, this is where we're seeing this point of easement coming in. For the masculine and feminine energy right now in partnership, this is that reciprocity that we were looking for coming back into focus. For feminine right now, this is feminine coming from a point of clarification, planning, working through this right now with the masculine. Masculine then is coming back in and lending as much support as they're able to the feminine that is standing or working through this point of vibration. For masculine energy right now, there's a feeling this is also building up your own sense of confidence at this moment, because what we're really identifying at this time is for the feminine energy that's experiencing this from the masculine. We saw that the masculine energy was starting from a place of disempowerment today. Some rough territory was effectively having to be navigated, but feminine energy is effectively moving right now from a state or space of taking some of the burden from the masculine that is then allowing the masculine energy to have some capacity of easement to be able to put more energy back into the feminine. So this is giving a lot of that positive reciprocity, a point of easement after what may have felt like some very difficult or rocky terrain. Now for the masculine and feminine energy right now that is not in partnership, this is effectively feeling a bit more difficult, because what we're effectively seeing right now is masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership at this moment. You're currently going through an experience right now where we are seeing that you are feeling this level of degree of isolation at this time. There's a lot of concentration that's effectively happening right now. Feminine energy is basically moved into this space of healing. They're in this point right now where they're effectively coming into a state of being articulate, working through a lot of this to a certain degree. Masculine, you're effectively trying to come forth right now to feminine, but you're feeling that anxiety or feeling that fear because you're either not necessarily seeing the response that you would desire from feminine at this moment, or you're even potentially feeling the anxiety that the feminine energy does not want you to contact them or move towards them. For both energies right now, this is what we're seeing is that make or break moment. This is either the masculine energy identifying and working towards feminine right now, bringing these offers forward, or this is masculine and feminine energy working to communicate with the masculine at this time as you come into this state of easement. This is a lot of challenging energy that we are seeing right now for both masculine and feminine right now. Because what we're really seeing for the energies that are in separation at this time is there's a feeling right now of the degree of isolation coming into play, wanting to come into a point of easement, but effectively being unsure how to bring forward towards each other. Masculine energy may even be feeling a point of intimidation about coming towards feminine energy at this time. And feminine energy is effectively just moving in the state or space of really just concentrating on the self at this moment. So, triggering energy today that needs to be navigated, but all for potentially a productive outcome. Final cards for today as we continue between our Six of Wands in combination with our Nine of Swords in its reversal, in combination with our Page of Pentacles. So, for masculine and feminine energy that is working in partnership at this time, this is coming through right now with points of productivity, trying to find those points of easement that are going to allow to the most successful outcome. This is that reciprocal give and take that we are experiencing at this time that is leading to better outcomes, even through some situations and circumstances that may feel like they had to bring up some deeper trauma, but is coming from a point of easement. For masculine and feminine energy right now that is not in partnership, this is effectively masculine energy effectively looking towards how they can come forward towards feminine at this time, feeling some level of degree of easement or anxiety, but also feeling this point of success. This is coming through right now for the masculine because, as we saw, this is a point that is either allowing the masculine energy to go forward right now with new opportunities, hence easing that energy that we saw of uncertainty. Or for the other part of the energy right now, this is the understanding of what you need to give forward towards a feminine that you identify is in this point of isolation or closure, potentially identifying why you are seeing the feminine energy at that degree, understanding and utilizing this point of trigger as a point of deeper self-mastery. For feminine energy right now, this is also working through right now. For the feminine that is experiencing this, we see that feminine has been doing a lot of this work right now. There's a lot of feelings right now that the feminine energy may be having that is not in partnership, that you're feeling a lot of this healing that is coming through right now. You're effectively kind of in this moment, and it's allowing for this point of empowerment. But again, we're almost seeing that it is very bittersweet at this time, because it is also making you kind of be in a state or space where, again, You're allowing yourself to be open to these new opportunities and experiences, but you're also feeling very isolated. So what we're seeing right now is almost like that flip-flop that's happening. Feminine is coming into a state of empowerment again, where they're starting to like find their strength, to like come out of this point of vulnerability. The problem is for masculine is you've seen the feminine in this vibration for so long right now that now you're questioning, whether this feminine energy is effectively open or available to you. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with, oh my goodness, Lovers in its reversal. So as I said, even for the energies right now that are in partnership, this is feeling very difficult. This is feeling very frustrating. This is feeling like there are some situations and circumstances as it relates to the partnership at this time that need further work. There need further alignment. A lot of the discussion that is happening right now for the partnered energies is how to come into better alignment, because what we are seeing right now is the two energies are in somewhat different vibrations. They need different things at this time. A lot of the conversation in partnership and union right now could be based on what needs to be provided to allow that sense of easement. For the masculine and feminine energy that is not in partnership at this moment, this is speaking right now towards a lot of this feeling of misalignment that's effectively happening right now. Because while we see that the masculine energy is at this point of disempowerment, feminine energy is now in this point of feeling more empowered. And this is creating what is feeling like some of this imbalance at this time. I'm going to stress today that if you're going through this, I want you to give yourself some moment to ground. Don't let yourself operate from a trigger point, because we see here that masculine is moving with a lot of hesitancy at this point. Feminine is moving from a lot of feeling that degree of clarity. Feminine energy is also reaching that like breakage point around some circumstances or situations, specifically ones that they want to see movement on, while masculine is moving from a state of uncertainty in terms of how to move forward. Everyone needs to be a little kind to each other today. Bottom of the deck on today's reading is King of Swords in its reversal. Feminine energy needs to, look, how do I explain this? Even for the energies right now that are in partnership, okay? I need you to understand and identify. Feminine, you need to identify that the masculine energy cannot be the strong one all the time. Okay, it is not the masculine's responsibility to be the strong one all the time. We're seeing here that there may be something that is coming into play right now that has to do with accountability. Masculine is effectively operating in this space right now where, again, there are some situations or circumstances that are leaving you feeling deeply triggered at this moment. Recognizing that it is okay to be in that vibration, that it is a safe space to be, is going to be very valuable and important to you as you navigate this, because what that's going to allow you to do is make sure that you don't do something from a state of being triggered, but instead you come into a state of deeper understanding of the self. For the masculine and the feminine energy not in partnership at this moment, this is potentially also that point of recognition and understanding that is happening at this time. Because just as the masculine energy was coming from a state, and they used that Venus in retrograde cycle to get in better alignment with their feminine energy, feminine is also effectively doing that right now towards the masculine energy. This is creating a bit of a moment right now where, again, this is really hard, because what did we identify the feminine was seeking right now from masculine energy? They were seeking masculine energy to come from a point of integrity. Feminine energy is seeing the masculine energy right now in a point where they may be questioning their integrity. But what potentially could be happening right now for the energies that are not in partnership is this isn't a moment that the masculine is trying to move from a state of integrity, but it could be coming from the fact that the masculine energy is moving from a state of deep fear. That there are some fears that are coming to the surface right now that are being potentially misrepresented or misarticulated. For both energies right now, I gotta say, looking at these cards, empathy is key. Have some empathy as you encounter anything you're encountering today, because there's a lot of potential misalignment that we're seeing in terms of how you are feeling versus how it may be interpreted or understood. So let that empathy fuel you today, okay? You heard it here. that is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and sharing it with me. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, graystrega.com. My private readings are done over video with the option of a recording sent to you afterwards. And if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you pay. Just mention your subscriber ID at the point of payment. Also, please remember, if you book a private reading on my website, it is a two-step process. You have to book the reading and you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you would like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never inbox you. I will never DM you. I will never slide into your PMs and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website, so I encourage you to do it there. I want to thank you guys so much for being here with me today and sharing with me in this reading, and we will do this again tomorrow.